Ashi Anand too joins in on the show. Ashi, hi, afternoon. How is it that you're looking at the developments in IndusInd Bank? Safest to avoid right now, or would you say for those holding it, maybe could buy some more because even after the earnings, you didn't see a crash in the stock. Seems like a lot of negatives were already in the price.
Hi, firstly, thanks for having me on the call. So on IndusInd, I think what you kind of mentioned towards the end, right? A lot of the negatives being in the price. If you are looking at kind of valuations, it has kind of fallen from about 1.5 to about 0.8, 0.7 times book value. Now, at those valuations, a lot of these current kind of accounting irregularities that have been identified are currently kind of priced in. And for a bank that used to trade historically at quite comfortably 1.5 to 2 times book, trading below book does really account for a lot of the kind of current concerns. I think an important element for the bank to really sustain and possibly start to move up going forward is that the irregularities that have been identified, this needs to pretty much be it. Now, with a kind of clear management transition plan, the old management that was responsible for some of these issues having kind of resigned, new management slated to come in. The bank does have kind of good positives in terms of its long-term franchise strength. And as the new management comes in and you start to kind of see the recovery, we think the stock could kind of do reasonably well going forward. Possibly for people who've got investments, they could possibly keep holding. But I think for someone looking kind of entering the stock at these levels, you probably wanted to wait to see clarity in terms of one, the new management and the kind of overall things they're doing to put in place things in the bank going forward, and also just ensuring that there are no other cockroaches that actually come out of the cupboard.
We've definitely recovered a little bit from the session lows, and we've made it back to that 24,600 mark. But still, let's see how we actually shut shop in the next 15 minutes or so.
But Ashi, just wanted to have a quick take from you that how do you read into this particular news flow while the government has announced the action plan for the coal sector with the coal production targets for Coal India also being set, but the coal ministry is likely to seek approval of cabinet to establish coal trading exchange. What are your thoughts on this one?
So, this is a sector which has required kind of deregulation for a long period of time. It has been a sector which has been quite kind of muted for extended periods. We've heard about improvements in kind of Coal India production targets consistently. I think it's been almost 2 decades now, where one is constantly kind of hearing about plans where they are looking at trying to kind of increase production and various other measures. That has been kind of a segment which has been difficult to actually start growing. It's also, as a sector, it's not something that we find very appealing because as an energy source, energy kind of is moving towards solar, towards wind, towards other forms of renewable. Thermal power plants is possibly the kind of power generation more of the past in the future. So in terms of coal as a sector and a segment, it's not something that we really focus on quite significantly. Coal India and production targets have been something which have been lagging for quite a long period of time. I think the coal trading exchange is something which is interesting. There is a need for kind of modernization and kind of deregulation in the sector. This is a step in the right direction. But it is something that we'll continue to watch because we've heard a lot of promises from the segment, but actual execution has very often lagged.
Right, okay, that's the entire word coming in on the energy as well as the coal space. Right. Actually, we've often talked about the entire capital market theme, not just exchanges, but AMCs, brokerages, etc. Where within the listed pool do you still find value and you would still think that one can put fresh money to work?
So capital markets, according to us, is very attractive from a longer term perspective. This is a play on the larger financialization of savings that you are expected to see in India. And you're seeing those trends already quite clearly, but it's something you expect to see continue over kind of coming decade. If you just look at the amount of savings in India that are still concentrated in fixed deposits, real estate, gold, there is clearly a very clear case for a potential shift of this towards financial securities. Now, while all kind of capital market plays are interesting from this longer term theme perspective, if you look at certain underlying dynamics, there are certain segments which at this point in time seem to us to be more attractive. Asset management companies, wealth management companies. I think these are the two segments that we clearly favor at this point in time. While there are a lot of changes happening in terms of F&O regulations and SEBI is trying to kind of clamp down overall F&O activity, we are staying clear from brokerages and also kind of depositories. We don't really know exactly how much volumes can decline. So you probably don't want to kind of be participating in the space until there's some clarity around that. The third kind of the other segment is really insurance. Insurance is also very attractive in India from a longer term perspective. But what we have kind of seen is one, growth has been a bit muted, and there's also some kind of lingering kind of potential. There's a consultation paper, and there's some kind of noise around whether whether IRDA comes in and kind of caps the amount a bank can actually distribute for their own insurance company. And this could have some kind of impact on bank insurance growth. This is the rumor. There's not a lot of clarity about whether this will actually come about or not. But I think that's one of the reasons you see in insurance companies be relatively quite muted in terms of overall market performance. So if you're just looking at the kind of capital market play, we are continuing to focusing on asset management and wealth management, some amount in insurance, while staying away from brokers and depositories.
All right, so that's the take on some of these brokerage-related counters. But just a few minutes left for the market to shut shop. It's been a good recovery for the Nifty Bank at least, because for now it's just 120 points of cut is what we are seeing, while Nifty 50 still struggling above that 24,600 mark. But Ashi, just a quick take on the pharma space as well, because Sun Pharma numbers are weighted. Generally, the numbers do come during market hours. But what's been your reading so far for the pharma earnings, and where do you find value at this point?
So I think if you're looking at pharma, you have to be very, very stock specific. And the main reason for this is a number of companies actually have a very high Revlimid base. And if you're just looking at the pharma sector overall, I think FY26 and FY27 growth may be a bit challenging because of the sheer amount of profitability boost that this one single drug has had for a number of companies. Now, if you are being stock specific and you are kind of looking at kind of the drug pipelines closely, there are still kind of areas that are kind of interesting. Sun is doing very well in terms of its specialty kind of portfolio, and I think they should continue to be able to do well. Players like Lupin and Cipla do have some interesting drugs coming in from the inhalation pipeline. I think if you just go forward 1 year, the whole GLP opportunity really opens up from a non-developed market perspective. And that could kind of lead to some kind of quite interesting earnings for companies that are participating in that space. So I think pharma as a whole, we are a bit kind of cautious on in the context of this high Revlimid base. But if you do go stock specific, for companies with an interesting drug pipeline, drug launch pipeline, as well as certain companies in the CDMO space, there are clearly interesting bets which are out there.
Right. Okay, Ashi, great to have you on the show.